Awesome. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for showing up. Tonight, I'm just going to be talking to you guys as a fellow UCF graduate. This is going to kind of cover what my experience in college, kind of landing this job coming out of college upon graduation. I know that's a big deal when it comes to, thinking about graduating and getting your life together and everything like that. I'm sure that all of us know somebody or have heard of somebody who's getting ready to graduate and they don't necessarily have anything in line or in store. And it's very easy to let time fly by. These 4 years have flown by me. And, being able to set yourself up for a really good opportunity come graduation is going to take a lot of weight off of your shoulders. It's just when you're getting ready to graduate, you want to make sure that your grades are in line. You're trying to get all of your credits in line. Where you're going to live, how are you going to make money? Having this weight off of your shoulders before you even graduate is, it was a goal of mine, and it's just something that's going to make your life a whole lot easier. So without further ado, let's talk about my college journey. So I was originally just going to do business. I was originally going to FSU. I was going to just do sales. Both my parents were from sales, and I saw what they did. They talked about some of the amazing things that they did growing up throughout their career. And so that's what I was going to do, and kind of had a last minute change and decided to go into engineering. And that's what brought me to UCF. Engineering here is a lot more respected compared to FSU. So I wanted to put myself in good shoes. And so I started off with mechanical engineering. I did it for 2.5 years and I had a blast. It was a little bit of a last minute thing for me. And I came to quickly realize when I got into, the major courses and everything that, you need to have a passion for your major. And for me, it was more of a money driven passion, other than I wasn't super into what I was learning, and it made it a lot harder for me. And at the end of the day, I was going to try and graduate with an engineering degree and then go straight into business and kind of relate the two. So I decided to switch routes and go straight into what I was planning on doing. And I joined the College of Business, and I went into the marketing degree. I was fully planning on finishing with a marketing degree and had a little bit of a rough patch when it came to getting credits together, and kind of had to make a last minute change to integrated business. This was just going to allow me to graduate in a decent amount of time, and just utilize my time just to graduate and get started working as soon as possible. Because at the end of the day, that's what we come to college here for. And so I just wanted to throw this in here because, I know a lot of people who have changed majors many different times before. And, I just want to show that, it's not the end of the road to change your route or anything like that. You come and you're spending money here at the college, you might as well do it in the right way. And so I am coming out of college working for a company called Tektronix Industries. They are pretty much an owner of a bunch of different brands, floor care brands, construction equipment, and like lawn care equipment. So they're selling, it could be stuff to clean, any kind of stuff to clean the floors, electronic mops, and those are affiliated with Target and Walmart. And then we're also affiliated with Home Depot and Ace Hardware. So we're handling inventory for big box retailers. And I'm actually going to be starting out in Home Depot. So it's cool. I had a passion for working outside. I worked for a company called Creative Design Space over the summers while I was in college, just to make a little extra cash. I started in construction, and then I kind of did a little bit of interning in the sales. And that was where I kind of found a passion for working outside. And so this was a good introductory opportunity for me, because I'm going to be handling, I'm going to be gaining a lot of knowledge in that outdoor industry type stuff. But yeah, so that's the company that I'm working for. Super excited. I start mid-August full time. So coming up quick, definitely. But to start, we'll talk about some of the things that we can do to really set yourself up while you're in college. And I want to make a big point is, and it's okay. I'm not knocking anybody who are doing a minimum of classes. When I was in engineering, I was completely stacked up. They were hard classes, and I totally understand where you're coming from, where you feel like if you're drowning in school, you might not have a lot of time to get involved in the college. But I will say there's a lot more opportunity that comes out of getting involved. There are opportunities everywhere, especially with UCF. There are hundreds of different clubs. You're in the Orlando area. There's so many ways to get involved, and that's the best way to meet people. That's the best way to hear those different stories. And when you meet all these different people, everybody has a different background, they've got different knowledge than you, and you can really work on that networking skill because you're only going to be networking the rest of your life. And so when you finally get involved, for example, when my only thing that I got involved in was AMA, you want to make the best that you possibly can out of it. You don't want to be someone who is, just there and where you can say, oh yeah, I was a part of this club, but the question is, what are you getting out of this club? And so for me, I took American Marketing Association and I kind of made it myself. And you can kind of brand yourself by what you're affiliated with. And so for me, that was a big talking point when it came to talking about my experiences was my affiliations with American Marketing Associations, talking about how to represent yourself in a professional manner, networking with different students, being a part of different workshops and affiliating with some of the local businesses in the Orlando area. And so you want to be affiliated. You want to make sure that you're making a difference in these clubs. If you have the opportunity to, work with people or get a board position, we're looking for board positions here with AMA. That's where I really jumped the gun and got involved. I showed up to the board meeting. It was like the general body meeting, and that's how I met one of the original presidents, Sean, and they had opportunities to get involved, to be a part of the board. And I saw a really good opportunity just to start getting experience. And I was marketing at the point, and I joined into the finance branch, the finance committee. And it might not have been exactly what I wanted to do in college, but at least it was some experience that I could take and at least try and help out with. And I learned a lot from it. So sometimes taking those opportunities and kind of stepping out of your bubble is completely okay. And so, and while you're doing it, you want to establish something that can last. You want to do something that you can gain knowledge that you can take the rest of your life and be able to apply it later down the road. And so I feel like a lot of the things that I've done with AMA, I can say that I was able to apply that when it came to representing myself and just networking when it came to finding a job, everything like that. Onto the resume, I will say I have been working on my resume for a long time, and I think it's something that is just very important when it comes to keeping your professional experience, on paper. I believe keeping your resume up to date every 3 months or so, or if you find a new job, I was in and out of jobs. I was a server for, pretty much all throughout college as well throughout high school. And so every time, I worked at 5 different restaurants. Every time, whether I worked for it for a month or, a year, I kept that up to date. And if there was anything that I could add onto these resumes, I added it. I think everybody has their own experience with resume. There's a lot of really good sources to go to with UCF. I am no, super pro. I think everybody's resume is tailored to themselves And so I won't be exactly going over how to cover your resume or what to do, because it can be variable depending on everybody's situation. But I will say, when it comes time to targeting the job that you want to tailor your resume, maybe have a couple of different versions for your resume. And I'm going to get into that when we go into the job fairs and everything like that. But having a couple different forms of your resume can really just give you a variety of different ways to make yourself to represent yourself to different people, because it might look better to one person, maybe in sales, than to a divisional manager who has been doing recruiting and is from a different area, forever. So little tweaks here and there is always good to keep it in mind, but you always want to have your resume up to date, whether you're looking for a job or not, just because over time, it's good to have. You're going to need it no matter what. So let's talk about the start of finding this company. And I will say job fairs are some of the best opportunities to meet, all of these different possible employers. My recommendation is to attend every single job fair. If you are actively looking for a job, attend them all. Even if you're not, if you're like a sophomore in college, you're not necessarily looking for a full-time job, but there's always those opportunities for internships, and that's what these companies show up for. Is they know they're going to a college. They're looking for that. They know they're talking to a bunch of hungry college students ready to gain experience, and you need to be 100% taking advantage of that. There's a lot of people that I know that throughout college, they never went to a job fair. And this is one of the best, easiest opportunities to reach out and at least start practicing talking to professionals. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to go through an interview. You're going to have to start working at some point. And even if, you're not necessarily getting anything out of it, like an internship or a part-time job or even a full-time job, at least go and practice representing yourself in a professional manner. Start talking, walk up to companies with that resume of yours and practice that little elevator pitch. Talk about, practice talking about yourself and, representing that resume that you've been working on. When it comes time to job fairs, especially if you're looking for that internship, you're looking for the part-time job, you want to have 3 to 4 target companies at least that you can research, that you have really good knowledge about. And depending on your research, because I believe, I think that's one of the things that really helped me get my job is I did extensive research on my job. I did who are they working for? What kind of business is it? I knew it was global. I knew that they were selling to big box retailers. Well, what's it like selling to big box retailers instead of directly to consumers? And that's stuff that you can bring up. And, when you talk to people, those recruiters and everything, and they see that somebody already has knowledge about their company, you're instantly going to stand out. And so you want to practice, talking about some of the points that you've researched. Rehearse those conversations. Talk about, be able to summarize yourself in a very effective manner. You don't want to sit there. Most of these job fairs, you have about a minute or so because there's this big line of people. I know it's a little bit different with Zoom and everything, but make sure that you're ready to talk about your best main points that are represented on your resume, and then show a little bit of knowledge when it comes to the company that you're looking for. And it's definitely going to stand out. There's job fairs in fall, spring, and actually the way that I got mine was through the COBA Invitational. So if you are in the College of Business, it was really cool. I don't necessarily know how it's going to go when it comes into the fall, when everything is in person. But the way that the COBA Invitational worked, it was kind of like a speed networking thing. You sign up for all these different companies, and you kind of get a couple of minutes just face to face on camera to kind of explain. They might ask you a question or two, and bam, that's it. So it's very short. I think there were about 10-minute interviews, and that's your only chance to make that good first impression. So you want to be able to summarize and just talk about yourself in an effective manner. And then obviously there's so many internship opportunities with these job fairs. I mean, that's the best way to start and get that experience, especially when it comes time to graduate and you're looking for that full-time job. Having internships under your belts. I had a couple buddies who landed some really amazing jobs, but they also held, multiple internships. And when companies see that, okay, this person's been affiliated with, multiple companies and they have experience in multiple companies, you're going to be at the top of their priority list for sure. The big thing to consider when looking for a job, and that's why it's so important to get involved in this process as early as possible, is because this process takes time. It really does. And so, when it comes time and you're already graduated and you're looking and you're hungry and you're ready to work, and it's very common. Most of us are, pretty low on the funds come graduation, and you want to start working. You need to take into consideration the process of, starting to work for a company. In my case, the whole interview process, which I went through 9 total interviews in order to get my job. It was about 3 months worth of waiting. They have to get everybody's schedule planned out. They have to figure out what positions are open. Depending on the recruitment process, the elimination process, it can take time. And so that's why it's so important to start early and get all of that out of the way. And so by the time you graduate, you're ready to start and you're ready to go. I think I have 10 days of no working after I graduate, and then I start full time, which I know a lot of people who have been graduated since spring and they're still looking for jobs. And, those are the people that really didn't think about it until the last minute. And, you go to college for a reason. You're spending money for a reason here, and you might as well take full advantage and prepare yourself for these things. Because my process, like I said, it took 3 months, and I'm still getting set up when it comes to the HR department, and it's a whole process, just transferring from part-time to full-time and figuring out locations and everything. I've been on the phone waiting, and that's that big important time. Let's say you find that company, be prepared to always be open for communication. One of my biggest mistakes that I made with the company was, I had a couple of contacts hooked up with my email. I was checking my email every day, making sure I wasn't missing any calls. I was prepared, always have my phone on me in case anybody called. But one of the biggest things that, nobody told me about, I wasn't prepared for. So, I'll say now, check your spam folder. Your spam folder. I made a huge mistake with that. I had an opportunity to meet my manager. It was kind of like it wasn't like a one-on-one opportunity. It was more of like a little welcome to the company thing. And they sent this email out, and then the RSVP was like a week long, and it went straight to my spam folder. And so I didn't see this email till almost 3 weeks after the event had happened. And so talk about looking at something and having your head fall off. You're like, oh my God, what do I even do? It was very stressful. And so always keep that in mind. Be very good with communication. And I thought I was staying on top of it, but that's just something that I learned from my mistake, is always be checking your spam folder for all of that. But keep in mind that in between stage, getting affiliated with that company, if you're trying to work as soon as possible, it can take time. And that's why it's very important to start. So here's where it comes into, this is where I learned a lot when it came to the interview process. I started the interview with a recruiter and a guy that was a divisional manager all over that my first two interviews were with recruiters, then it was with a divisional manager. And then from there on, I got put into a process to, it was called the Leadership Development Program, and it was me and 31 other people being considered, of which 7 got hired. It was me and one other person in Florida, and so that was this very extensive process that it happened over a period. Finally finishing all of the interviews, it took about 2 months, and so it was very extensive. And you talking to upper level management and everything, there's a lot to take into consideration, because the recruiters are probably the easiest people to interview with. Those are the people that their job is to get you affiliated with the company. So they're going to be very nice. They're going to just ask you those surface level questions. They're going to figure out a little bit more about you, and it seems like it's going to be very conversational. But when it came time for me to interview with upper level chairmen and national sales managers, then it was like, all right, I can't be talking about the classes that I'm taking and how busy I am with school. I have to show them that I have knowledge within this company. And so that's why it's so important as you go through this interview process. Like I was talking about, you need to have knowledge of your company to a deeper level. So at that point, I knew, everything about my company. I knew as much as I could find out. I knew exactly what brands they were selling, who they were selling it to, who, like, when they were having these big conventions. A lot of these details, knowing them, this is going to really stand out to those upper level management, because they're like, wow, this person actually understands, some of what I'm doing, some of the things that I'm thinking about on a day-to-day basis. And that's going to really help you with those interviews and kind of relate to those people, because as a college student, it can be extremely hard to relate to, a national sales manager, or, a huge chairman that works with the CFO and everything like that. You're like, wow, this person's 40 years older than me and has been working in the professional world for even longer than that. And somehow I'm supposed to relate with him. And so having that knowledge of not only your company, but what your position is. And so I knew that I was going to be an event marketing specialist. I knew I was going to be handling a lot with inventory, working with big box retailers, working with different big box retailers, managers, the products, everything like that. I had to be able to demonstrate that. And so when it comes time to answering some of these questions, you need to consider, how are you going to fit into this company? Knowing this position, how are you going to, how are you going to be the best person for this position? And so pretty much the way I thought of it is, I already had the job. Now I have to demonstrate, my knowledge of what exactly I'm going to be doing. And that really, really helped me with just some of the things that I wanted to talk about, some of the questions that I wanted to answer. And it really helped my conversations go very smoothly, because some of my interviews lasted 45 minutes. And so it's like, wow, that's a really long time. What am I going to talk about all this time? And so you need to have that either, memorized or rehearsed, and you're going to be in really, really good shape. This is not something, when it comes time to solidify yourself as a potential candidate, to just win. You can be very confident in yourself, which, I'm pretty confident in, me knowing a lot about myself and being able to talk about myself. But when it comes time to making sure that I'm the best candidate for this position, it took a lot of research. And another great thing is, most likely 99% of the time, if you're going through an interview process, they will let you know who you're interviewing with. And so I at least had a name. They would tell me who their name and their position, and I was at least able to look them up on LinkedIn, kind of see what they were about, what their experience was in, because at that point all right, well, I kind of have, they don't know who I am. They know that I'm a candidate, but at least I have something where I can kind of tailor what I want to talk about to fit this person. So, for example, one of these sales managers, he manages actually all of the operations for the expansion west for a company, a brand of ours called Heart, and it's pretty much tools that they are starting to sell in Walmart. So if you see Heart, H-A-R-T, that is something that my company sells, but they're expanding it west in all of these Walmarts. And when I looked him up on LinkedIn, I came to find out that he grew up playing sports. He was an Alabama fan, which, I had a couple of sisters go to Alabama. He had experience in medical sales and in management. He was he was actually a UCF I don't know if he graduated from UCF, but he was affiliated with UCF in a certain way. And so, bam, what did I talk about? I talked about, my leadership skills that I learned from playing quarterback in football way back in the day, and that was something where me just mentioning that 10 minutes go by and we've just been talking about sports, but I'm gaining that rapport, I'm kind of connecting with the guy, and we ended up having a really good conversation. And I wouldn't have been able to even think about that if I, didn't research this person. And so it's very, this is just something that's going to kind of give you that leg up when it comes time to those big interviews. I guess the huge thing nowadays is working with Zoom. I think it's going to be based on company to company, especially if you're going through the interview process. Like I did 9 interviews. So they're not, I wasn't meeting with everybody in person because some people were over in Milwaukee, some people were in California, some people were, South Florida. And so it's very important to consider this online interviewing process. And, the big thing, and it might seem totally obvious, but you'd be very surprised at how many of these people that I interviewed said that some of the people that they're interviewing, they're folding laundry, or they're in a tank top, or they're not even, they're like on their computer, they're not totally focused in. And so you always want to make sure that, cliche, but it's dressed to impress. You want to look good. You want to make sure, for guys, make sure your beard's trimmed up. If you have one, I can't, but I didn't have to worry about that. But you want to make sure that, it's hard. You're not walking up and shaking someone's hand. And so you want to make sure that you can make the best first impression as possible. Pay attention to some of the stuff in the background. If you got a bunch of crap in the background and it can be kind of distracting, try and have the most professional looking background that you can possibly have. If you can put on a fake office or something like that, whatever it might be, just to give you that leg up of just, all right, I'm here, I care about this. This is what I'm focused on. And like I said before, pretend like it's in person. Pretend like you're sitting in front of somebody and you're making that good first impression. You want to have good emotion. You want to, you want to be yourself, but at the same time sell yourself and promote that good conversation. And from there on, for me, I always felt it was much easier to interview over Zoom than in person, because you're not in person. I would prefer it in person because I feel like I can make a better impression, but I think it's something that's inevitable depending on what company that you're going to be working for. And like I said, this is all based off of my experience. Actually, my first interview with the COBA, during my COBA Invitational, which is where I started working for TTI. My first interview, I didn't make sure, I logged in, maybe 10 minutes before my first interview with my first company, and my camera was not, neither was my microphone. And now I'm freaking out, but I'm trying to get my microphone working, my camera's not working, nothing's working. And then it came time for my interview, and all I can do is type questions. And it's like, okay. It kind of defeats the purpose completely. I just had to type my questions, and there's no really way to make a good first impression. They don't know who they're talking to. So just make sure that everything is working. Your computer's charged up. You got, don't have blotches or anything like that. So I would highly recommend, hopping on the day before, an hour before, just making sure everything is working properly. The big thing that most people worry about in these interviews is the difficult questions. Especially, I know I had mentioned it earlier, when you get to people that are a little bit more involved, they're not your typical recruiter just trying to get you a part of the process. They're actually evaluating you. Are you a good candidate? Can you actually fill this position? And the big problem is just worrying about answering those questions. And so it's so important to physically think about some of the questions that people are going to ask you. And that's why, and you want to tailor these questions. You want to know, all right, this is the company that I'm working for. What kind of questions are they holding? What kind of position does this person hold? So what kind of experience? So if you're dealing with a sales manager and, they manage a bunch of teams, that some of their questions, they're going to want to kind of relate. They might ask something about your leadership experience or networking with different people. And so you need to start considering, all right, this is who I'm interviewing with. These are the types of questions that they could possibly ask me. So this is actually a pretty surface level question, but it's very popular and it can be kind of difficult, if you don't think about it. Why do you work for this company? Why do you want to work for this company? It's very broad and it can be a little bit difficult, but you need to think about it. What is my experience and how is this experience going to help this company out, depending on what this company does? I had a lot of experience in leadership. I came from a sales background. I interned with, an outdoor company. I did sales, I did construction. I was working with a lot of the tools that this company sells. And so I was kind of able to, tailor my answer off of that. And so, you want to you also want to, make sure that it looks like you want to work for this company. You want to talk about, this is something that I've been looking forward to. I want to gain experience in this field, and you want to show them, I want to work for this company. Another one that's very popular is tell me about a challenging time. I got asked this probably 5 different ways. One of the big ones was, tell me about a challenging time that you had to make a decision that not necessarily everybody agreed with. Okay, well, it's a difficult one, but that's why practicing and having everything, thought of and the different experiences is going to come into play. And that's why it's so important to be able to summarize yourself and know your most important experiences right off the top of your head. Because believe it or not, they know that we're college kids. They know that we're still in school. We don't have a whole lot of experience. So that's why it's very important to be able to relate your experiences to different aspects. And so that's going to allow you to kind of think about it and answer it to the best of your ability. And the big thing when it comes time to thinking about these difficult questions is everybody is very worried about how they're going to answer. But a little bit of silence in the conversation is okay. It's okay to pause for a second, think about it. You don't need to be asking, oh, can I please have a few minutes or anything like that. A little bit of silence is fine. You can sit there and it shows that, you're not freaking out. You can sit down and think about the questions they're asking and then, reply to them in the best way. Another very popular one is, how do you feel you can make a change? Again, think about how your experiences can benefit the company. You want to be an asset to the company. And so it's very important to just kind of adapt your different experiences to answer these difficult questions. And then finally, we're going to touch on this "you're not qualified" question, because I got hit with that question with my process in TTI. I was very, very much prepared for, but it's definitely a curveball question that if you don't think about how to answer this, you could end up being like, well, oh, I'm sorry, but I don't know. Like, you can end up pausing, you can end up freaking out, and it's definitely something, that you need to consider. And so, I'll get to that in the next slide, but it's definitely one that can throw a lot of people off. And I didn't expect to get it, but I did get it. So it was pretty interesting. Another huge thing when it comes to interviews is you want to keep it very conversational. You want to ask them questions and you want to make them talk. You don't want to sound like you've been rehearsing every single thing. Every single word that comes out of your mouth is rehearsed for every single second. If you sound like you're talking a million miles an hour and it sounds very generic, it doesn't stand out to them. It sounds like another regular conversation. And you want to keep in mind, this is a conversation. It's not this test where you have A, B, and C that you have to answer. This is a conversation of how to sell yourself, and having a little bit of personality in your conversation. And when your interviewer walks away saying, oh, I actually had an enlightening conversation with this person. I was actually able to talk to this person and they weren't just, answering and then stopping. Like, oh, all right, what's your next question? You don't want to put pressure on the interviewer to have to ask you the next question. You want to keep it conversational, and that's a big thing. And two very big common mistakes when it comes to asking questions is listening to the question and listening to the answer. Many people, very common mistake is when you're having these interviews go on, they're not listening to anything of what this person is saying. And because, this is somebody that works for the company, they're going to provide you with important details. And upon research, if you actually know, you'll probably pick up on a couple of those details and you can expand on what they're talking about. But if you're sitting there and in your head, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? That's going to sound very unnatural. And you're going to end up having an answer that has nothing to do with what they're talking about. And then it kind of makes this conversation a little bit more like a question and answer interview. And in my opinion, I think it's very important to not do that. One of the biggest mistakes that I had was making sure I was very focused on asking them questions. And so one of the big things for me that I got much better at through this 9 interview process was, I would listen to what they said and I would ask them a question because I had some set questions that I wanted to know about the company. I would then ask them a question and I was already thinking about the next question that I was going to ask them to keep the conversation rolling when I wasn't even listening to their answer. They would be answering my question. What is it like working for the big box retailers? Is there a lot of is there a lot of conflict between some of the rivalries that they have or anything like that? And then bam, I'm thinking, talking about management or something like that. Whereas I could be listening and then expanding upon the point that they're making. So it's just something to keep in mind. You can relax a little bit, take a breather and take your time, and you'll be able to have an actual real conversation with someone instead of this big back and forth question and answer conversation. So one of the huge things that helped me when it came to forming some of the questions and answers is the STAR method. And I'm sure you've heard about it before: situation, task, action, and results. And you've got these bullet points here that kind of specifically tell you the things to consider, but it's very objective. But it's an amazing way to, when the company, who you're talking to, the position that they hold, think about some high-level questions that they could ask you. Then apply the STAR method. All right, here's my experience in this. Here's the situation that I was in that relates to the question that they're asking. So when they were asking me, for example, one of the difficult situations that I had, I had to think about, all right, what's the situation? What did I have to do? What did I do? And then what were the results of that? And so, tailoring it and actually writing out your answer is going to be very, very helpful for you. And that's actually how I answered that you're not qualified question. So pretty much I got hit with, Mitchell, I really like what you're saying, but on paper, it doesn't quite look like you're qualified for some of the things that's going to be expected of you. And so my star looked like, all right, so my situation is the fact that I'm not qualified. My task is how am I going to convince them that I am qualified, and what was the action that I took that could possibly make me qualified? And the results would be, all right, here is my example of what I did that maybe I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge in. And so for my example, I used the fact that I went into AMA as a marketing major with no finance background, but I was able to help the treasurer with some of the funding and forecasting for the upcoming merchandise the next semester. And we were able to get t-shirts in and still save a little bit of money and blah, 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 blah. And so I showed that, I might not have been qualified for the position that I was in, but I completed and I was able to adapt and complete an objective that I might not have been, very well rehearsed in. And that kind of showed them that I was able to figure out a difficult task per se and be successful in it. And so that's like kind of one of the ways I highly recommend when you're writing down questions, kind of structure your response like that. And I had a whole list. I probably had 20 different questions and answers to those questions based on the STAR method. And a lot of them looked exactly the same, but sometimes when you split it up into the little categories, you can kind of tweak something here and there. So very important. I think it is very, very helpful. And, it made me very prepared for some of the high level questions coming in. The big thing, the way that they'll structure some questions is there's a problem. How can you fix it? How can you be that asset? So you want to think about some of the potential problems that the company has. Just another way to think about some of the questions that they could be asking. And kind of like what I said, I had a whole lot of questions that kind of looked very similar, a whole lot of answers that kind of looked very similar, but they were a little bit tweaked here and there in some of the details that I would throw in. And this way I was able to answer some questions right off the top of my head because they could be related to different questions. The big thing here when you're answering questions is you want to have your questions down to the point. I mean, your answers down to the point. You don't want to go on this big long rant of 2 to 3 minutes of everything. You want a good conversation, and they probably have multiple questions they want to ask you. And if you get caught up on one talking for 5 minutes, they'll probably skip over some important questions that they want to find out about you. So you want to think, all right, what exactly did I do, and how can this contribute and relate to the company? So think about it when you're rehearsing some of these answers. Keep that response time concise. And it's okay when you're answering questions in an interview, you don't want to be like, oh, that was 1 minute and 15 seconds, but when you've practiced it enough, all right, this is how I can answer something, and it's going to be between 30 and 60 seconds, and it's going to answer them immediately. So that's going to help out a lot. So this is just about everything that I have of my experience so far. I know we all have a lot to go and experience later down the road. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of resources that I think helped me out a lot. And I hate to do it because this is actually representing University of Florida. But I did have somebody that was, came out he was very involved in the College of Business over there. And he came out making a lot of money, and he was able to provide me with some of the stuff kind of from an administrative standpoint that can help a lot. And so let me stop sharing just for a second and pull up some of the things, and what we'll kind of take a look at a couple of them, and then if you guys want, I've got this all in a zip file, and you can just leave me your email and I will send you the whole file of everything that I had when I was, going through this process. So let me share again. This was absolutely totally helpful for me. Some really good stuff here. Okay, so here's a PDF about interview preparation, all this checklist, a link to an amazing video. I think it's 2 hours long. Really good stuff here. The STAR method, awesome stuff, PDFs. So that's just one of them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, some questions that you could be asked in your final interview. Pretty much a lot of the stuff that I've been going over, but in much more detail. It could help you out a lot. Another one, thank you notes, the STAR and START method. Big one was I already pulled this up. The interview tips, pre-interview, stuff to think about during the interview, post-interview, all of this. I mean, it was really, really, really helpful. So if you're interested, please leave me your email and I will send you over all of this. This is another one. This is actually like a worksheet. So when it comes time for those job interview or job fairs, or just, when it comes time to making that first impression, this is kind of something that you can tailor, and some questions that you can, fill out and have, something to rehearse off of and everything. So please let me know, and I will send all of this over to you. It will definitely help you for sure. But other than that, if there's any questions, I can take them now. But thank you guys so much for hearing me out. I hope you could get something out of today, and good luck with everything come the rest of your college career. This is kind of like my first and last workshop with AMA, so it's a happy, sad time. But I guess I did do the outdoor or the cooking social, but you can only do the cooking social so well over Zoom. But again, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you got something out of it. Other than that, feel free to leave, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. I'll stick around if there's any questions.